Islam, religion with Allah since time began. That is for dhikr, remembering Allah, and Ra is for the month of Ramadan. Oh, Ramadan. Za is for zakah, to cure our greed, when we give our money to those in need. Sa is for salamun alaykum, peace be with you, wa alaykum assalam.
Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya wa sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You are welcome again to another edition of this enlightenment, program. Today we are going to be looking at another topic, which is towards effective management of Islamic philanthropy. Towards effective management of Islamic philanthropy. And in order to achieve an effective management of an Islamic philanthropy, which we call IPOs, that is Islamic Philanthropy Organization, it is very important that we have a functional Islamic good corporate governance structure put in place with efficient and effective professionals on ground to implement the following characteristics that we are going to be mentioning one after the other, embedded in its policy trusts, processes, procedures, and operations. Number one, which is very important, to make any IPOs to be very effective in its management, is for them to put in place a very strong, culture of accountability. Accountability. And accountability can be categorized into three parts, namely financial accountability, fairness accountability, and performance accountability. So what do we mean by financial accountability? Financial accountability is about making and keeping of transaction records of an organization. And this type of accountability focuses on the management of funds of an IPO. And it can also be measured through evaluation of financial reporting and disclosure management, with a good system of financial reporting, put in place by that particular IPO that wants to be very effective. Then number two, when we talk about fairness accountability, it is talking about operating the organization as required by regulations and laws. For example, in this part of the world where we are transmitting, that is Nigeria, this kind of fairness accountability focuses on achieving the objectives and goals of the organization. And then the third category of accountability is what we refer to as performance accountability, which is about the operational results for an organization. And of course, performance accountability focuses on the results and achievements made by an IPO, that is Islamic Philanthropy Organization. So when we combine all these three categories of accountability together, it will now give us the two perspectives of accountability from the prism of Islam, which are as follows. Number one, which we call Habulun min Allah, that is accountability to Allah. Accountability to Allah, which of course is derived from the concept of khilafah, that is vigilancy, and amana, honesty or trustworthiness. When mankind worship Allah and they also fulfill all their duties as a khalifa on the surface of the earth. The second accountability from the perspective of Islam is what we call hablun minan nas. We are talking about accountability to stakeholders, i.e., we are talking about accountability, or it's rather known as accountability contracts among mankind. And we look at the Quran, for example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Quran chapter 5, verse 1, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, a'ufu bil uqud. Oh, you believe, fulfill all your contracts, fulfill all your covenants, fulfill all your bonds, fulfill all obligations that you willingly entered into. If we also look at another verse or another chapter in the Quran, for example, when we look at Quran chapter 65, verse 8, that is in Surah Al-Talaq, which underscores the importance of accountability and how serious accountability is before Allah and before humanity. Allah says, وَكَأَيِّن مِّن قَرْيَةٍ أَتَتْ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهَا وَرُسُلِهِ فَحَسَبْنَاهَا حِسَابًا شَدِيدًا وَعَذَّبْنَاهَا عَذَابًا نُقْرًا. Meaning, how many a town, that they deliberately, disobey the commandment of their Lord and His messenger. And then Allah says, we now call them to His very severe account, to give account of their deeds. And again, we inflicted a very terrible punishment on them because they were found wanting in their responsibility. That is accountability from the prism of Islam, which is hablun min Allahi, accountability to Allah, hablun minan nas, and accountability to the stakeholders. But two, which is also very important for any IPO who wants to be very effective and efficient in the management of the affairs of that organization. They should also put in place a culture of financial reporting and disclosure management. That is, any IPO that understands the purpose of its existence and that also wants to make an impact in the community where they are operating from, if they fail to put in place financial reporting and disclosure management, that organization will be found wanting. What are we talking about here? We are talking basically of every IPO must have this culture of carrying out annual auditing of their account, of their records, for the purpose of transparency and accountability. And this, of course, will ensure that the organization, when they do this, it gives, it boosts their credibility, it boosts their reputation in the eyes of their donors, in the eyes of their beneficiaries, in the eyes of their partners. And of course, in Nigeria, for example, it is part of the requirement of the law and part of the extant regulations that an organization must always have an audited account which must be signed by a registered professional with the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, which means the chairman and then the accounting officer. Because these are part of what makes an organization to be responsive and responsible, not only to the stakeholders, but, also to their donors and their partners, as well as their beneficiaries. So it is also one thing that we must also take very good care of when we want to make our organization to be very effective, and then also to be able to send positive signals, to their donors as well as their partners, and of course, importantly, to the beneficiaries of that particular IPO. It is very, very important. So these two characteristics, accountability and financial reporting and disclosure management, are two key important characteristics that any IPO, Islamic philanthropic organization, that wants to make an impact and also wants to create a niche for itself amongst all other IPO, these two things are very germane and they are very central to what we call Islamic, good corporate governance, in any client. Inshallah, we are going to pause here because this particular topic has series. This is the the first part of it. Inshallah, when we come next time, we'll be taking the second part of this particular topic before we take the final one that will take us through some of those important, features that we expect to see in any effective and efficient IPO management. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.
Deen al-Islam, religion with Allah since time began. That is for dhikr, remembering Allah, and Ra is for the month of Ramadan. Oh, Ramadan. Za is for zakah, to cure our greed, when we give our money to those in need. Sa is for salamun alaykum, peace be with you, wa alaykum as-salam.